Not Ohio State, Michigan, not Ohio State, Penn State, as it's been the last few years, not even Ohio State, Michigan State, as it was for a number of years. Ohio State, Indiana. Best game, biggest matchup in the Big Ten Eastern Division to get to Indianapolis in 2020. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we love each and every day with the best bloggers, broadcasters, writers in the industry. We've got Paul Gable on the line from the rival site for Indiana football, thehoosier.com. Paul, how you doing today?
Good, Mark. How are you?
I'm good. So you're going to have to give us some perspective on what it feels like close to the team, close to the university, the students. And when I say close, of course, we're talking 2020 close. So maybe a lot of communication, but not necessarily a lot of high fives, but how this football team has energized the community.
Yeah. For so many years, you would say Indiana University, and in the next breath, it would be Bobby Knight or Tom Crean, or it's a basketball school. And that is not the case anymore. Coach Tom Allen has done a tremendous job. You know, he was hired December of 2016 as the head coach, and the athletic director at the time, Fred Glass, refused to listen to a fan base that wanted a national search done. A lot of them wanted someone from the SEC or Pac-12 caliber type coach, and he said, "No, my guy is right in this locker room." And so far, Tom Allen has done a tremendous job of validating that and turning Indiana into a football school.
So, Paul, how has he done that? The recruiting has increased and improved considerably. I know that he's talked about increasing and improving the speed on defense being one of the initiatives, but they're still playing way above their recruiting rankings. So there's certainly a lot of player development and a lot of inspiration there.
There is, and he's done it in two ways. He has sold a belief with his LEO mantra, love each other. He's a player's coach. I mean, you look around the country and you look at some of the locker room celebrations out of a place like Clemson and some of the others where Dabo is dancing and having a good time and carrying on. And you're starting to see some of that here at Indiana. But another big way that Tom has turned the program around is recruiting and that Florida pipeline. You know, he started off as a high school coach in Florida and was a defensive coordinator at the University of South Florida before he came to IU. So he has relationships down there, and it's one reason why 22 to 23 of his players on his roster right now are from the state of Florida.
Yeah, you do see these coaches take a bit of a different new style, new age, new school approach to interacting with their players. There's not necessarily that Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, I walk in the room, I throw down my resume, and everybody's going to respect me. So I don't need to go maybe to that extent. But at the same time, I think Tom Allen takes it to another level, especially physically takes it to another level when you see, bumps and bruises on the cheeks and a couple teeth knocked out and the whole deal and running laps around the stadium, high-fiving fans in the past. It's all really good stuff.
Yeah, he knocked down the trash can when they beat Virginia, and the story he told the other week. Some people in the media had asked him, have you ever gotten hurt doing stuff like this? And he said when he was at Ole Miss, he got his two teeth knocked out, and one of them was already a false tooth, so that disintegrated. The other one required a couple procedures and a root canal. And then he tackles Monster Williams after the interception against Michigan and winds up with a cut to the face. And Monday morning he walks in and somebody asks him about it. And he says, well, it didn't require any stitches. And he's having fun with it, as he should. He has the number 9 ranked team in the country, and they're playing extremely well.
They're playing extremely well, and they seem to be playing better by week, at least in regards to the domination over the opponent. So give them all credit for beating Penn State. I watched every play of that game. Penn State was better on the field for most of those plays. They won the game statistically. but they didn't have to have, meaning Indiana, an official's call or anything like that. They won it fair and square. I didn't find a whole lot of controversy in the game, and they pulled through. What was impressive was, after being held to about 120 yards of total offense, pulling off a 75-yard drive in the closing minutes, and then turning around and tacking on the other 25 needed in overtime, of course, to win the game. So that seemed to fuel it. Obviously, you win because the narrative has been, and it's beyond a narrative, it's the truth. Aside from getting blown out against Ohio State last year, they have been right there with the Buckeyes, much, much better Ohio State teams on paper that have contended for national championships, taken Michigan to overtime a couple times, been right there with them most of the time. And then the Penn State game has come down to the last drive for a few consecutive seasons. So it's been knocking at the door. And that was the one that kind of smashed down the door.
Well, I go a year before that to this game that we're going to talk about and preview against Ohio State. Last year, they lost by 41 points in a game that was not even that close. And honestly, and then all they do is they go out and they win 5 of their next 6. And to 8 wins on the season, tremendous season. But when you look back, and Tom's talked about it a little bit, there were some games that they didn't finish in. Michigan State last year on the road, they should have won that. They had Penn State on the ropes and had a lead on them and probably should have won that. And then the Gator Bowl, they had Tennessee dead to rights. And if it wasn't for an onside kick that everybody in the stadium knew was coming, except for IU, they probably win that game. So all of a sudden you're talking about an 11-win season for Indiana. So, I get that a lot of people outside of Indiana and outside of the state and the program want to talk about the opponent's record this year and want to say that they're doing it with smoke and mirrors. And they're really not the number 9 ranked team in the country. And I point back to last year. This is a team that could have very easily and probably should have had 11 wins to their credit. This shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. And Ryan Day said as much this week.
Talking Indiana football with Paul Gable. You see the banner right there, thehoosier.com. We invite you to check out his work and everybody else there at Rivals covering Indiana football. The Hoosiers are 4-0, top 10 in the country. It seems like just about every week they smashed down another milestone, and this would be the first win against Ohio State since 1987, much like Michigan. So if anybody out there believes in superstitions, then for the Buckeyes in Columbus on Saturday. And I remember that 1987 game in Columbus, 31-10. Yes. So let's get to the matchup here. I'm going to leave it wide open for you, Paul, because there's one particular matchup that I gravitate to, that I've got in my mind in regards to where the Buckeyes seem to be struggling, where they have certainly sent number 1 draft picks to the NFL for years and years and years, multiples at a time. But this particular year, struggling at that position unit where Indiana's loaded up. But I'll let you take it from there in regards to where you think the good matchups are.
Yeah, well, I think, start off with Indiana. And Michael Penix at quarterback has been phenomenal this season. 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. 2 of the 3 came last week up at Michigan State. One, the defender made a good ball on. The other one was just a poorly thrown ball by Michael. And 1,000 yards. He leads the Big Ten with 1,000 yards. So, Penix is a talent. He's going to get those receivers going. Ty Freifogel, 200 yards last week at Michigan State. Whop Philyor. And a lot of people are asking what's happened to Whop. Nothing's happened to Whop. Defenses are bringing another guy down and double and sometimes triple teaming him, and that's leaving Ty open, Peyton Hendershot open. And I think I know where you're going to go on the perceived weakness for Ohio State. Those receivers for IU are going to have a field day this Saturday. I really think they will.
There you go. There it is. Ohio State obviously loaded in the secondary from a talent perspective, but they're not playing well. They're inexperienced. They lost all their starters from last year, excluding Sean Wade. They lost a top backup in Amir Reep. and they've just been lost in coverage and not playing well and not picking up the ball in the air. All those things right now. And Indiana's, I would estimate, and Paul, you can chime in, of course, the second best wide receiver core, and you might argue the best wide receiver core in the Big Ten, including the tight end.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to your point about that secondary, they haven't looked good since that Clemson game last December. I get that they beat Rutgers 2 weeks ago, but Rutgers was able to make some hay against that secondary a little bit. And yeah, I think when Penix is on and those receivers are on and they're not dropping balls, it's hard to find a much better receiver core than Peyton Hendershot, the tight end, Walt Fillier, Freifogel, and now you've got David Ellis back. He played for the first time all season against Michigan State, and he's starting to get back to healthy a little bit. And you're going to have to pick your poison if you're Ohio State. Do you try to shut down Walt and let Ty go crazy like we saw him do last week up at Michigan State? You only got 11 out there on the field, and you got to decide where you're going to put guys and what kind of coverages you're going to run.
We talk Ohio State football. We talk Indiana. We talk everybody in the nation. Check out the videos right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We get to as many teams as we possibly can. We are here every day, recording all day. We've got live streams running throughout the day as well. So please lock it in, subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications. That way you know when we're going live, which is today. Ohio State, 2 p.m. Eastern time, Florida State at 6, the SEC at 8, and then more coming up tomorrow. All right, we got Paul Gable on the line from Rivals. It's thehoosier.com. So the Buckeyes could, though, in trying to deal with that, kind of back off on the run and leave that run game up to their front four because Samson James, Stevie Scott are really good. Stevie Scott, as you well know, the leading active rusher in the Big Ten in terms of career, and Samson James, one of the highest recruits coming into the program, but they're only at 3.5 and 3.2 yards per carry.
Right. And for me, some of that is offensive line play or lack of, I think, at times. That's a unit that's battled some injuries thus far. They were without 2 starters last week up at Michigan State and held their own. But at some point, you're right. That running game is going to have to get going if IU is going to do what Coach Allen believes it can do, and that's contend for a Big Ten championship. I mean, we're 3/4 of the way through November. The weather's going to get worse. December 5th at Camp Randall on the campus of Wisconsin. I would imagine snow on the ground for that one. Michael Penix isn't going to be able to sit back and throw the ball 50-something times like he did in the win against Michigan. They're going to have to be able to establish that run. They're going to have to be able to establish that run early in the game. The last 2 weeks, IU's done a great job of closing games out with the run and putting together 4, 5, 6-minute drives where the defense lines up and they know what's coming and they still can't stop Stevie Scott or Samson James. But I would love to see Stevie Scott, who, was an Ohio State recruit as well as Rutgers before he came to IU. I would love to see Stevie Scott go off and surpass that 100-yard mark this week that he came so close to hitting against Michigan.
So, Paul, some of the concerns that we lay at the feet of the Ohio State secondary, we could flip around to the Indiana secondary having to deal with the Ohio State wide receiver core and maybe the best quarterback in the country.
Maybe, but I think this is the best defense that Ohio State has faced. I've said for the better part of 3 weeks that as talented as that offense is for Indiana, and it's pretty talented, I think the defense is what drives this team and leads this team. You don't have 12 interceptions by accident. You don't have some of the guys like a Tywan Mullen doing what he's doing as a cornerback and coming in and having 2.5 sacks in a game. they know what they're going to be up against. And I would imagine defensive coordinator Kane Womack for Indiana will put together a good game plan along with Tom Allen, who was a defensive coordinator before he moved up to head coach. But, the flip side to that, and you're absolutely right, Justin Fields is by far the best quarterback IU has faced this season. And, I don't know too many guys who have the same number of touchdowns as they do in completions. And Fields is playing in another stratosphere right now. And we'll see if Indiana can find a way to create some takeaways in that game. I think they will. I think they'll crack Fields a little bit, and he'll finish with 1 or 2 interceptions just because that IU defense is that good.
Tom Allen got emotional about his son's injury, and that has sidelined him, we believe, for the rest of the season. He plays linebacker. So I was asked, as I take calls every day, how significant is that? And I'm like, well, I got to turn that over to an Indiana guy because I don't know the depth chart. Some teams lose starters and they've got 6 linebackers and they're all pretty comparable. So it's not a huge loss. Other times it's a huge loss. So in terms of replacing Tom Allen, is that a significant loss? And I don't want to minimize it in any way.
Right.
But in regards to Indiana making up for that.
Well, here's where Indiana really loses Thomas Allen. And that's the attitude that he brings, the lunch pail mentality. He's going to show up and he's going to lead by example. And
that's not surprising, Paul.
Well,
just look where the apple fell from the tree.
But that heart and that Warriors mentality is what they're going to lose more than anything. And the sad thing is, he was having a whale of a game up at Michigan State, forced a fumble, and got in on a couple other big plays, and then sustained a hip fracture. And Coach Allen said this week it's very similar to what Tua had when he was at Alabama. And that's a shame. It really is a shame.
Got Paul Gable on the line. He covers the Hoosiers right there. You see the banner, thehoosier.com on Rivals. We all know the Rival brand. So please check out his work and the rest of the staff, Indiana and Ohio State. Do you make predictions on these games? Do we point everybody to the site? Do you make those on Friday? What's the deal with that, Paul?
Yeah, we'll have our staff prediction that will roll out Friday. It's all of the writers and our publisher, Jim Coyle, and then we have a guest picker, Verdell Jones, who picks as well. I'm assuming you're putting me on the spot to make a pick.
I am basically saying you can leave a prediction right here, but if you want to point everyone to the site, that's fine. You don't need to leave it here.
Yeah, that's fine. And Coach Allen talked about it this week. For too long, this team has been told what they can't do. And I was texting with a friend of mine last night who covers ACC programs, and he said, I'm sitting and I'm watching Tom from Monday, and he's talking about how he's sick and tired of this and he's sick and tired of that, and he immediately thought of Herb Brooks with the 80 U.S. hockey team. How if we play the Russians 10 times, they might win 9, but we got today. And Tom Allen, I think, will have that same message for his guys. And it's going to be very interesting to see how both teams do in an empty horseshoe. Every time IU's made the trip there, there's been 100,000 fans, and that OHIO cheer, you hear it for weeks after that game. It's going to be different. It's going to come down to who can handle adversity the best. And if IU hangs around in that game, can they deal with hanging around in that game? Or is that going to be a moment of, hey, we're not supposed to be in this game because we've never been in this game before? But I think when it's all said and done, I think IU takes a significant step. And I think this game will be very similar. And I'll go back to that Clemson game in December, where one play will make the difference, and the IU defense will come up with that one play, and they'll pick up a 31-25 win.
There we go. We got Paul Gable on the line. And you would think that that would wrap it up. But when I've got a rivals guy here, I have got to get a take on the next recruiting class because we got the industry standard here. So your take on the 2021 class and how that's shaping up at this point for IU.
It's going to be a small class. Coach Allen has said that the thing that I don't think anybody knows how it's going to play out yet is now that the NCAA has granted the extra year, how many guys are going to move on? How many guys will Coach Allen have to recruit that are already on the team, so to speak? It's one thing Mel Tucker at Michigan State talked about last week when he met with the media up there. He was asked about recruiting, and he said, guys, right now my biggest thing is recruiting the guys who we already have here and making sure that we continue to build what we have. But IU's gotten some commits that are tremendous, including a 4-star Indianapolis area quarterback in Donovan McCulley from Lawrence North. And he's a real deal. He really is. And recruit that they have right now, who is a junior, Center Grove, Indiana quarterback, Taven Jackson, whose brother plays for the IU basketball team. He's the real deal as well. So, as things continue, as Indiana continues to move up in the rankings and Coach Allen continues to be on Sports Center and all the other things, the attraction is only going to take off. And I think that combined with the Florida pipeline, combined with some other inroads that Coach Allen and his staff have in the South, I think you're going to see them contend with, maybe not always get, but contend with the SEC and the ACC for some of the premier talent in some of those states.
So maybe Ohio State, Indiana becomes a rivalry for Big Ten championships for years to come. But as it stands right now at the Shoe on Saturday, noon Eastern time, Ohio State, Indiana, 2 top 10 teams, a Big Ten semifinal of sorts. Paul, we appreciate you stopping by. It was great insight into the game.
Hey, thanks for having me. And Saturday's game, you mentioned the Big Ten East. I maintain it also has national implications.